Hi, my name is Bill Byers. I'm a past president of AIChE and a member of AIChE's Disabilities Task Force. It's Chemical Engineers with Disabilities Task Force. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Christy Osland, Jennifer Wall, and Ted Conway, participants in a session we have today in the Institute's Disability Unity Community Convocation session on catalyzing the unique abilities of students with disabilities. This is the fourth Disability Unity Community Convocation jointly sponsored by AIChE's Education Division and generously supported by the AIChE's Foundation's Doing a World of Good campaign. The session features a diverse set of panelists with expertise in inclusion of STEM students with disabilities in undergraduate studies. Christy Osland is coordinator of student disability services at Michigan Tech. Jennifer Wall is communications manager and Career Plus program advisor for career services at Michigan Tech. And Dr. Ted Conway is professor and head of biomedical and chemical engineering sciences at Florida Institute of Technology. I have some questions that we can chat about, and I'll address the first one to Dr. Christy Osland, if I might. What key modifications to instruction methods make teaching accessible to students with disabilities? And what key modifications in assessing student outcomes are appropriate for students with disabilities?
Modifications are really not that complicated. If we can start to incorporate the model of universal design, and I'm not sure how familiar people are with it, but it's the idea of planning a class in a space and the curriculum to be inclusive from the beginning. And we can start with really small modifications. If professors plan twice the amount of time, let's say you have 60 minutes, for example, to give an exam. If you plan your exam to just be a 30-minute exam and then announce to the class that everybody gets double time, you've already accommodated all the people who need extended time, which is the most common accommodation required in colleges. If you provide little cheap disposable earplugs, the students who need a less distracting environment, a lot of time that's all they need to put those in, and they can take a test in the regular classroom. So it's incorporating those small things that make a difference for everybody. When it comes to assessment, we can think about things like not relying just on the traditional exam, but incorporating a lab section if it is a class that really does require an exam, and having more than just one exam in the semester. Even if you don't already have an anxiety disorder, knowing that there's just one or two high-stake exams and your whole grade is relying on that, you will have an anxiety disorder, right? So if a professor allows at least 3 or 4 exams to assess a student and also counts homework for as much of the grade as an exam, then you are lowering the anxiety of everybody in the class, but particularly the large number of students with invisible disabilities who are living with anxiety disorders.
Great, thanks. Dr. Conway, do you see it the same way, or?
Well, actually, in my institution, at Florida Institute of Technology, we have a broad spectrum of students with disabilities. The majority of students just require a minimum amount of accommodation, extra time for exams, but we've had students who've been blind, who've been paraplegic. I had one student who was partial quadriplegic, and those are a bit more challenging in that we had to, first of all, the partial quadriplegic student, he was one of my graduate students. I learned to read his writing. It was not very good, but he was able to have a device for his hand, and he could move his entire one hand, and he could use that to write with. So it required me to actually learn his style. We were developing some technology to translate his writing style and it would actually come up on a computer screen, and we were able to have some success with that as well. So it's really, a lot of innovation is required, I guess, at the end of the day, because you have to tailor the accommodation to the specific type of disability. One size usually doesn't fit all.
Okay.
That's true.
And Jennifer, what is Florida Institute of Technology doing differently from both an administrative and a cultural perspective to foster an environment where students with disabilities thrive academically and feel included?
I don't know about Florida because I'm at Michigan Tech.
I'm sorry.
That's
I got
okay.
the schools
But no,
backwards.
you're fine, but I can
Yeah.
speak a little bit to that. So I am not a faculty member at the university. I work in career services. And so something that Christy and I have done to help students both academically and prepare for the future is we're working on collaborative efforts in our university. So disability services, career services, student success, we're all working together to create programming to make sure that our students are both successful in their academics, they're being supported, and in my role, I'm making sure that they're also becoming career ready so that they don't graduate with a degree and not enter the workforce. We want to see them be gainfully employed when they graduate. So for us, we're creating a culture on our campus that is inclusive, that again is not one size fits all. It's not about scalability and reaching every student, it's about reaching the individual students and making sure that we're accommodating whatever needs that they have. So that might be helping them with social skills. It might be helping them just gain the confidence they need to move forward in whatever it is that they're pursuing.
Do you see it similar at Florida?
I do,
Okay.
and I'd like to build on that as well. One of the challenges I think that students have when they transition from elementary school, high school, where the school system actually has to, I guess, anticipate the needs of the student. And the student is basically taken care of. They need to take responsibility for their own disability when they go into college. And so they need to understand that these are the tools that I need to be successful. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. The day you turn 18, you don't realize that now I'm an adult and I'm responsible for my own actions. So there needs to be a transition period where they understand what are the accommodations that are available and which ones are tailored specifically to my needs. So when a student comes to me, they say, well, I need some kind of accommodation. Well, what do you need? You tell me, and then we'll work on trying to make you as successful as we can.
Okay, great. Chrissy, how does Michigan Tech, I got it right this
You
time?
got it.
Measure progress with inclusion of students with disabilities?
That really is individual as well. So for some students, it's going out and getting that great job that they otherwise wouldn't get. But for some students, it's just making progress for the individual. So for example, Jen and I worked with one young man. He hit a lot of roadblocks, and his parents said it's time to come home and literally live in our basement. And Jen really spent a lot of time encouraging him, no, you don't have to settle for that. And so for him, success was recognizing that there were other options and going out and taking part in a different option. And he ended up joining the National Guard and being very happy with that and getting funding to come back to school. And he's still not living in his parents' basement, so that's success.
Wow, awesome. Are there any statistical measures that you can use that more university-wide, or is it pretty much like one success at a time?
It is. Statistics are still very depressing.
Mm.
They're very depressing. 50% maybe will graduate, and fewer of those will get jobs. If you have a mental health disability, 10% of those people are getting jobs. So the statistics are still very depressing, and if you're going to have any encouragement in this, you have to look at the individual success stories, or you'll give up.
That's true.
All right, good. Your programs received some press and some that are notable. What advice, perhaps, Jennifer, what advice would you give to your counterparts in other universities that may be trying to catch up with your
I think the most important thing is to not stay siloed. I used to work at the University of Utah in disability services, and we were very siloed. We would make sure that our students, that we met the accommodations, that we were following the laws, and that was it. And that's why I was so excited when I started at Michigan Tech and I found out that there was a collaboration between career services and disability services. We were communicating, so Christy wasn't solely responsible for those students, and neither was I. So she can work with that student on their academics, and then they can come in and meet with me as a career advisor, and we work together to help those students be career ready. So I think campuses across the country, departments need to be working together to look at the individual as a whole. And I think that's really valuable for institutions to catch up.
Great. I heard feedback from the student conference that was here this weekend that a session on students with disabilities was really well attended and a high degree of interest. And we've reached out to working professionals, the more common attendant at AIChE meetings, and had sparse willingness to recognize, publicly recognize that they're working with a disability. I found it refreshing that some students would do that. Is that your experience on campus? Are finding that more and more students are willing to ask for help and self-declare that they have disabilities that need help?
In my experience, not just my students, but myself as well, we all know the statistics that of the group of individuals with disabilities, only 40% have a visible disability. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because you don't have to hide it, but it's a bad thing because you don't have to hide it.
Right.
So that's the real challenge. I'm very, very fortunate to work in an environment where, and I'm certainly part of the administration now, but our senior administration, our president, for example, is very supportive of diversity on campus. I have worked in academic environments that have not been supportive, and it's been my responsibility to either adapt or get out. And that's been the model in the past. I think we're transitioning more to a more inclusive model, at least I'd like to think we are. And that's the model we want to translate to our students as well. If we can create an inclusive environment for our students, then they realize, and also be responsible for their own disabilities and the accommodations that are required for that, then they learn to transition better into the work environment.
Do you have outreach to like K through 12 to encourage people with disabilities who tend not to go into STEM? Do you have outreach that would?
We do a little bit. We work with the intermediate school district, and Career Services does some outreach as well. That's not our primary focus. We do have a program that reaches out to students in general, but we're not focused on students with disabilities in our outreach.
We have engineering summer camp for the local high school students, and within that group, periodically we will have students with disabilities. As we talked about earlier, I had worked at the National Science Foundation, and you can actually get an REU supplement for an NSF grant, which is a research experience for undergraduate supplement. And you can specifically target the disability community with these REU supplements. And we've had faculty who've done that. And they will bring in, now these are undergraduate students, so they're not K-12, but they are students that can learn in our environment and also be nurtured with respect to addressing their disability issue in an engineering environment.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate your being here. Looking forward to this afternoon session. Thanks again. Hope to see you again soon in the future.
Well, thanks for inviting us. Thank you.